Welcome to the No Mom is an Island podcast. As moms, we often long for moments of being alone, but the truth is sometimes we feel downright lonely. The intention of this podcast is to show you that you aren't alone, that we all experience similar things along this mothering journey. If you enjoy this podcast, please check out the episode description below for ways that you can help this podcast continue. Well, multitasking masters, whatever you are doing while you listen to this podcast, we hope you enjoy hearing the story of another mom. Today we welcome Erin. Hello, Erin. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for letting me interview you.
Oh, you are welcome.
All right. So tell the listeners your family, because this is really fun and it kind of makes me chuckle every time I see pictures of your cute little ones.
Okay. So we have 3 children. My husband, Quint, is a worship pastor here at a local church. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and our kids are 3. Anderson is 3 years old. They just 3 in March. And then Preston is actually 14 months old today. And Charlotte will be 6 months old tomorrow. So if you're scratching your head wondering how that's possible, which I'm sure you are, we pretty much got pregnant with Charlotte right after I had Preston, like within the first 6 weeks, we think. And then she was due to come in February of this year, and she actually ended up coming 2.5 months early in December of last year, making our youngest 2 only 8 months and 1 day apart.
Yes, and Anderson was not yet 3 when Charlotte was born. So you had a 2-year-old, an 8-month-old, and a brand new baby.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we had thought, well, maybe there'll be a small window of time where they're all under 3, and it ended up being exactly 3 months, actually, that they were all under the age of 3.
Wow. So. Yeah. Craziness.
Yes, it is, every day.
And I would imagine even leaving the house poses its challenges.
It does. You know, my husband actually got a motorcycle this past year, and one of his selling points was to me was that I would get our car because we only have 1 car. And it's funny because now that I have 3 kids, 3 and under, I really need a really good reason to leave the house because it's not even fun. So
right.
The car sits in the driveway most days, and I just have to laugh because all I wanted last summer was my own vehicle. And now I have one, and I just think, nope, not worth it.
But it will be soon. Pretty soon it will be.
Yes.
It'll get easier and easier to go.
That's what I'm clinging to. So
yeah. And my 4 were close together, not quite as close together as yours. So my oldest was 5.5 when my youngest was born. So we did have 4 that were 5 and under. And so, you know, like I remember, and, you know, it does take a little time before you can breathe again, but then it is good to be able to go places. And, you know, even though it takes a little more effort to drag them all around with you, I always thought, you know, like I need to make sure that we're still out and doing things, and my kids are learning. You know, my kids are learning.
It's funny you say that.
Yep.
Because I took my son Preston to the grocery store, and I usually never take him. I usually either try to go alone after the kids are in bed and my husband can be here, or I take our oldest. Mm-hmm. I took our just over a year-old Preston, and his eyes were like saucers looking at all the food, and I was like, oh my word, I need to get you out more often.
Oh, that's funny. All right, well, why don't you tell us your perspective on mothering, and feel free to compare what your perspective once was with what your perspective is currently also.
Okay. Well, yeah, my perspective is definitely going to be in the baby phase because that's where I'm at right now, and I can't even see past it. So for me, what I try to focus on every day, because some days are seriously so crazy here, is just each phase and challenge and joy. I know that it is fleeting, and so I do try to be in the moment and try to enjoy every step along the way. And even, you know, I have a thing where I love the sound of the diaper, like swishing around when kids first learn how to walk. You can just hear it like under their clothes, like
right.
You know, I love that little noise, and so when I'm in like up to my elbows in diapers, and I just feel like I'm going to be changing diapers forever. You know, I have that little like, oh, but I know when I'm not anymore, I'm going to miss it. Like some part of me is going to miss that. And so I try to just be, you know, in the moment. And my sister-in-law actually was over the other day, and I was cutting up kids' food, and I actually said to her, man, I just cannot wait until I can serve a meal and not have to cut it all into a million pieces. And as soon as I said it, I was like, oh my word. And I know when that day comes, I'm going to look at Quint and be like, no one needs me to cut up their food anymore. So I try to just keep that perspective for myself day to day that like, I know that as much as it feels like I'm in an eternity of not sleeping all night in diapers and stuff, that I know it is eventually going to come full circle and my kids are going to be independent little people. So
right. Another fun thing about them being close together after they get through this chaotic season is that they travel through the stages of childhood together, which is really fun too. Like they're doing kind of the same thing. So the age difference seems huge right now because of the baby stage. But give it a little bit of time and they actually will be, kind of into the same things at the same time and able to do the same things, at the same times and, just enjoying the same type of entertainment together. And that is really fun too. And it also is helpful because then you don't feel like you're trying to compartmentalize, what the older kids are doing versus what the younger kids are doing. Everybody's kind of doing the same thing. And that's fun too.
I look forward to the day.
Yes. Yes. All right. What is your parenting philosophy?
I would say that my husband and my philosophy in parenting ultimately is that our kids, as much as we helped create them and love them and, would do anything for them, they ultimately are God's and they're not ours. And so that, day to day is a reminder to us that, we're just really trying to guide them into the people that God designed them to be. Right. And so I know, like helping them to find their bent or the thing that they were created to do. And obviously to glorify him through finding that is our ultimate goal and that we try to accomplish, on a daily basis. So
right. Yeah, it's interesting to even just sit down and think about what your philosophy is because, whether you've thought through it or not, your philosophy does dictate the decisions that you make. But when we stop and think about what our philosophy is, then the decisions that we make are more intentional. And I know, I try to be intentional. And so often you get caught in the chaos and I don't want to like ruin anything for you, but there is chaos when they're older too. Sorry if you were hoping.
My friends' kids, I know that's true.
It's just a different chaos. But when there are so many days where you lose sight of the intentionality of your actions. It's helpful to, be regrounded by thinking through that again. And I've noticed that even in interviewing people, when the weekly interviewing somebody is helpful to me to, reset my own, my act in a philosophy, like be intentional, do it on purpose. Don't just act and exist in this like winging it zone all the time.
That's so true. And, I heard a quote one time, my husband and I went to see a speaker and he said something along the lines of, God has given us the ability to create beings that will live for eternity. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my word, like the responsibility of it, was so crushing almost because we did. I mean, you see them as this tiny little baby, but before you know it, they're a human and an adult and a person and they're going to live forever is the ultimate truth, And so, like you said, I think just being intentional and keeping those things in the forefront of your mind, even in the middle of the chaos is where we try to live. So.
Right. Even in the middle of things that they want to eat that need to be cut into quarters so they don't
exactly.
choke. I remember the one summer when my one son, his favorite things to eat were cherry tomatoes and grapes. And I'm like, could you pick anything else that needs to be cut into like microscopic pieces before I can give it to you? It's like, oh my word.
Oh, I know. Exactly.
All right. So what has been your favorite thing to teach your children or to watch them learn?
I really love when they acquire language, the process of that. Every time, now I'm on my second go around with it with our second son, Preston. It's amazing how, God created us to pick up language. And Preston isn't talking yet, not much, but he knows 1,000% every little thing that I say to him, and I can give him, directions and steps of 3, and he can do all of it. It's crazy,
Yeah.
And our son Anderson actually talked at a really young age. I would say by 2, he was putting sentences together and just astounding us with the words he was coming up with. But it's fun because now that he's 3, most of his baby language is gone. He's kind of figured out how to say it. Really, the one that he's hanging on to that Clint and I don't want him to give up is he says yes instead of this.
Oh.
But he knows he says it, and so he's trying to correct it if he can catch it. So he'll say yes, this, and then, but I'll be like, no, don't say this, say yes, please say yes. No, Mom, I can't. I need to get it bigger,
Oh.
So it's just those little things, that as I realize as he's getting older, he's not saying sunscreen anymore, but he says sunscreen, and it just it just like makes your heart almost stop when you hear it the right way. But I just love that, the first starting to talk, and when they're just little sponges, and it's, what's this, and you tell them once, and it's like locked and loaded, and now they know that that's a deer or a dog. It's crazy.
Right.
So I really enjoy that.
And the fun of asking them to say words that are bigger than they are, and then watching them mimic the words. It's so fun. It is so amazing the way God has designed our brains that we can absorb that and repeat it and do it. It really is fascinating and so fun to watch. And I think God allows those things to happen during those young chaotic periods because they're these like little glimmers of like fascinating fun in the midst of 8,000 diapers and food that has to be cut up and crying and all of those things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So what has been your least favorite thing to teach your children and watch them learn?
Well, keep in mind, my oldest is only 3, so I'm sure when I think back on this in a couple of years, I'll be like, oh, that was nothing, But for us, it was sleep training. Our oldest was like the absolute worst thing that I've ever had to do,
Okay.
I was a new mom, and you've never done it before, so I made so many mistakes. He honestly still is not a great sleeper and needs a lot of help. When he's up in the night, he wants someone to come in and lay next to him to go back to sleep. So when we had Preston, I was like, no, I'm not doing that again. And he now sleeps 12 straight hours, never gets up. He's like the bomb at sleeping. But I would never want to go back and sleep train Anderson for $100,000.
It's possible though that his personality. I mean, I have.
I do think.
I have 2 children. I have 2 children who sleep very nicely and 2 children who do not even still, like that stay up late and all of those things. So it's possible it's just part of his personality, especially if either you or your husband also are like late night or, like don't sleep, don't need as much sleep and that kind of stuff. It's possible that just might be him and it isn't really your fault in how you sleep trained.
I don't. Oh, he's taken so much training. So much. So and then he'll regress and it's kind of start. Even just getting him to go to sleep on his own at night, has been a fight. But we're there now. So, and then I would say the other is just consistent discipline and follow up every single time. Our son Preston, who's 14 months, he's really in the phase of when I tell him no, he's looking to see, am I serious or am I not? So then he'll continue forward, and it's every time, even if you're in the middle of, in fact, it happened today out at the sandbox. I was nursing my daughter and I had to get up with her, and, discipline him because he was going away from me into an unsafe situation. But it's just the times that you don't feel like it, that you want to just let it slide, but
that you
I
can't.
let it slide. I'm going to just be creating more stress for myself later. So you have to follow through.
I remember when nursing, I particularly remember this when nursing our youngest, our daughter, and the 2 boys would do things. Our oldest was 5 and she's always been pretty easy, but the 2 boys would try things. And I was like, you know what creates the most consequence beyond like me scolding or whatever the punishment was for their disobedience is if I set the baby down who is now screaming because I
Oh,
was feeding her and now I'm not. And so now
right?
like they're experiencing the chaos of baby screaming and I'm in trouble.
Yep.
And I was like, that was really preventative because they did not like
Yeah.
it. And it's like, well, like I had to put her down because you didn't listen and now and she's hungry. And it was like it was funny how effective that was, because they
That
really
is funny.
disliked more than me being angry with them. They disliked that their baby sister was crying. Um,
Aw.
and it was just kind of funny. But again, yeah, the consistency and the like, are you kidding me? You're gonna make me have to
Right.
get up and take care of this rather than just listening the first time. I'm like, ugh. Like, why'd you have to make
Yes.
me get
Oh, I
up?
know. I think I've been saying to our oldest a lot, why are you doing that? Because today he said to me, Mom, I want to show you what I want to do because I don't want you to say, Anderson, why are you doing that? And I said, oh, have I been saying that a lot? And he's like,
That's
yes.
hilarious.
But I'm like, I don't know why you do most of what you do.
Yes.
I don't know why I ask you either because you don't know either. But
Either that or you're going to have the most self-aware 3-year-old ever.
yeah, right. Oh, man.
All right. So the next two, the high moment in parenting and the low moment in parenting. I'm sure that with 3 that are so close together, your low moments in parenting probably happen way more than you want them to.
Oh, my goodness.
Just out
Yeah.
of the chaos of what your life probably looks like on a day-to-day basis right now. But what did you think of when you thought of like that high moment in parenting? Well, a moment when you're like, actually, I've got this.
You're right. Well, first of all, whenever I think, actually, I've got this, something always bad happens. So I've learned not to think that. But really, for me, I would just say, like, when there's actual peace for a period of time or a moment, whether all 3 of them are asleep. Like, when I get them all down at night, I'm like, oh, my word. Or when everyone is awake, but, like, it's all peaceful and happy, you know? Or our oldest is really, like, so helpful and responsible and for the most part is really good to his brother. And so when I see him reaching out and making connections with Preston, even though I didn't ask him to, or, you know, that really warms my heart. Or mostly if I can get through dinner prep in one piece without everyone falling apart. I don't know how women do that. Typically my husband is here for that hour of the day. I don't know how women do it if their husbands are still at work or because that hour of the day is by far the worst one.
It's so
in the entire
hard.
24 hours. Yes.
Yeah. That wherever it is within 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock for whatever reason and I think it's universal. Like most moms will say, I don't know what it is, but those hours are particularly awful. And
yeah, they are.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Well, I think they're all hungry, and it's like my husband's just coming through the door, so they want his attention, but I need him to do that. You know, it's just, oh my word, it's just, they're all falling apart at that point of the day.
All right, then what about that low moment in parenting where you were like, oh my kid, if you can have the humorous perspective for the moment when you were almost are like, my kids are just going to need counseling.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I mean, there are a lot of low moments, you know, in general. Really, the one that came to mind, though, is our son, Preston. Because I got pregnant with Charlotte so close to when I had him, I mean, I think he was only 6 weeks old, I was nursing him, which I had nursed Anderson to 13 months with no issue. And I noticed that, you know, he just all of a sudden became the fussiest baby on the planet. It felt like he cried for 2 straight months, and I just couldn't console him, and it was so frustrating. And I thought, well, like, maybe it's a dairy allergy, so I cut out dairy for a couple weeks, nothing. Maybe it's a wheat allergy, so I cut that out. We see a chiropractor on a regular basis, so I took him to the chiropractor because I thought, well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe something's off in his alignment. I thought of everything under the sun, and finally, I just had this nudging that, like, I don't think he's getting enough to eat. And then, in fact, I took him to the doctor for just a checkup, and he was pretty drastically underweight for his age. Yeah. And it was like that light bulb moment of, oh, my gosh, of course he's been crying for 2 months. He's hungry. And I can't believe that it took me that long because I've had one other child, so it wasn't even my first. But because I had never had that situation before, I just didn't notice it or recognize it. So I started supplementing him with formula, which I was so adamantly against for the stupidest reasons. And within 2 days, he was a different kid. Yeah. And then, I take a pregnancy test a couple weeks later, not because I think I'm pregnant, but because my husband keeps telling me I am. And sure enough, I'm like, oh, my word. Well, yeah, of course. So So it's just one of those, like, I feel for Preston so much for that time. I'm so grateful he was so tiny and won't remember any of it. But it was just like, my kid is totally going to need counseling. I didn't even know he was hungry for 2 months. You know?
Like, talk about middle child syndrome.
Oh, I know. And Quinn and I are both middle children. So it's so ironic that we did this to our middle child, because we always have said, like, we're going to treat our middle child like the king, you know? And now we, like, give him a sister 8 months younger than him. It's just ironic and funny.
So I gather that Preston is also kind of a little bit of your rascal. Is that correct?
Oh, my goodness, yes. He is a wild child. And Anderson, I was spoiled in that when I would tell Anderson, no, don't touch, just like that, he'd just turn and go the other direction, you know? Not Preston.
Let me guess.
His desire to touch it.
I was going to say, let me guess. Preston then continues to move toward touching it while looking at you with a charming smile and his eyes dancing. I have found the middle child, like, their disobedience really looks like an attempt to be humorous a lot of times, and you're like, are they just trying to be funny, or are they definitely trying to be bad? And it's so, like,
I know.
It's so hard, and yet they are so funny about it sometimes that it makes it hard to figure out how to properly correct the behavior, because there's so much humor involved in it. Or you're, like, desperately trying not to let them see you laugh while you're trying to scold them. It's so funny.
Yes. So he is funny, and he's so stinking cute that I sometimes do just have to look away just to, you know, keep my cool. Because I'm like, oh my word, you're so cute. You know?
Yes. All right. What has been your greatest influence or influencer in your parenting style?
Well, I would say for me, I'm so blessed in that, you know, my parents are amazing parents, and that, you know, they still are today. But I feel like so much of the way that I parent is the way that I was parented, and I know a lot of people don't have that experience, but for me, you know, I do, and I'm grateful, so grateful to them, and I know I should tell them more often, because I really don't know where I would have ended up had I not had, you know, the parents that I did. I see people that are so resilient to challenges and struggles, you know, when they're young, and I just don't see that in me, that characteristic, and so it just floors me to think, you know, where I potentially could have ended up. So I would say definitely my parents, and then in our church family, I have a lot of sister friends that have large families, and quite a few of them are a little further ahead in their journey than I am, and so I would say that is a huge influencer to me, to be able to see their grace and tenderness and discipline with their own families, and, you know, they're a great example to me. So
that's great. Yeah, that's wonderful that you have so many surrounding you like that. So definitely a gift. So how do you, in the midst of your 24-hour-a-day mom existence, how do you make time for yourself? What do you do for self-care?
Well, this is something I'm actually really trying to get better at, because there was a season in my life where I didn't do this at all, and it really did affect me in a lot of negative ways, because you just can't be needed that much by that many people without taking time for yourself, because you know, you can't give what you don't have, essentially. So if you're empty, you have nothing left to give. So, you know, I'm trying just in my day-to-day fighting. You know, one of the things that my husband and I have really had to get serious about putting on the calendar, and thankfully my family helps us with the kids, is a date night, and we do it, you know, once a month, which isn't often, but it that one day a month makes such a difference.
Yes,
you know, the fact that we don't have our kids around, we don't have to wait to talk over them or tell them, hey, Dad's talking right now, please be quiet, you know, that type of thing, and just be able to connect and get out and do something fun, or, you know, even just stay home and not have our kids. So that, I would say, is a big one. Really, podcast is something that I've just recently sort of stumbled into, and that I really like, because it's something I can do for me while I'm doing something else. So while I'm folding laundry or doing dishes or doing dinner prep, like, that's something that I do. And then, you know, another thing is that I never liked to cook prior to having a family. Really, when Quinn and I first got married, he did most of the dinner prep because I worked later than he did. So he would always have it ready for me when I got home. But that's something that I'm really kind of enjoying getting into, trying new stuff. And so sometimes that 45 minutes, if Charlotte's asleep and he takes the boys outside, and I know I am still doing something for somebody else, but it is kind of quiet and peaceful,
Right.
I do enjoy that.
Oh,
So
that's good. Yeah, and the idea is like again, you're right. You can't be fully there for the people you need to be when you're running on empty, or you start feeling really bitter about all of the things that you're doing
yes,
for the other people.
yeah,
And so,
very resentful.
right.
Yep.
And so whatever it looks like, and it doesn't have to look the same for everybody. It doesn't even have to look the same for you now as it does in 5 years, but just the idea
Sure,
of like,
yeah.
am I making sure that I am also taking care of myself, that I'm doing something that invests in giving me the peace and quiet or the outlet that I need, and also that you're investing in your relationship with your husband too, because we know that how important that is too.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say is your favorite life hack? That thing that you do that is that makes your life easier, cheaper, or faster?
I had a couple. One is that I make myself go to bed, even if I'm not tired, by a decent hour, because I know that for myself, like, I'm a horrible person when I'm not rested.
Yes.
And I seriously haven't slept through the night in like going on 2 years.
Right.
So we had almost pretty much gotten Anderson sleeping through the night when Preston was born. So
Okay.
so I know for like this happened just last night. It got to be shortly after 10. I really wasn't tired, but I was like, I have to go to bed because I know if I stay up till midnight, I'll be miserable for everybody tomorrow.
Right.
And that just sets my whole day off with
Yes.
everybody. So, and then the other thing that I've started doing that I don't like to do, but is using the time that all three of my kids are down, which typically I can get the babies napping at the same time and Anderson just goes down to his room to rest,
Right.
to do something that I don't want to have to do when they're awake, whether it's cutting up a watermelon for dinner and all the time I think, I don't want to do that. That's the last thing I like doing. But I think, do you really want to be doing that when Charlotte's in her swing crying, Preston's at your feet crying, and Anderson's saying, I'm hungry.
Right.
So, and it's usually that, then I'm like, nope, I don't want to do that. I'd rather cut it up in silence. So
Right.
I go and do, whether it's some of the dinner prep, if I can cut things up in advance or something to make that hour of our day go a little bit smoother. It's kind of really made a big difference for us. So.
Yeah, being proactive.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my husband calls it skate to where the puck is going to be. So.
Is he a big hockey fan?
No, not at all. So it's funny that he loves that analogy.
That is funny.
He said to me one time, because I think I had gotten like a pot of water and all the spaghetti already measured out for like the second we walked in the door from church, I could just turn the water on and start it. And he said to me, there's nothing hotter than when you skate toward where the puck is going to be.
That's awesome.
Okay, it's like, thanks, I think. Yeah.
Thanks. It's like, I'll take it.
Exactly. So I do what I can in that area.
Yep. All right. So what word of encouragement would you give to that weary mom out there? Either a word of encouragement or a piece of advice?
Really, for me, and this was really brought evident to us, in the time when Charlotte was born, is that life is just a constant changing of seasons. And if you're in a tough phase right now, it is a season and it will change, because sometimes I think we get in those tough, long moments and we feel like, oh my word, like this is going to be the rest of my life, and it's not. Like it is going to change. When our daughter Charlotte was born, my water broke at 28 weeks, which was weird because I had both of my boys full term fine. I ended up having to go to a hospital 90 minutes away, and they tell me, well, we pretty much have to keep you here either until you make it to 36 weeks, or, which they told me was very unlikely would happen, or until she's born. So I left, my 2.5-year-old, my 8-month-old at home with my husband. I do all the care for them, essentially. My husband works, and I'm the one that gets them dressed and sits with them while they eat breakfast. And so that was like a huge struggle for us, for me to just be basically, I left in the middle of the night and I didn't come back for 10 days, And, then Charlotte was born, and then she was in the NICU for 8 weeks. And so then we were driving back and forth to Buffalo, which was 90 minutes each way, and we had 2 little boys at home, and it was a really difficult season, but it was just the season. And now when I think back, it wasn't that long ago. She came home on Valentine's Day of this year. Already so much of it is fuzzy to me, and that seems like it would almost last forever, So I would just say, if you're in a place where you're really discouraged or, weary or tired, like there is hope. You are going to come out of it on the other side. It's uncomfortable in the moment, but those are honestly the times we really look back on those hard times, for a lot of our life. And, that's where we learn a lot of what we learn. So that's something that's just kind of been an encouragement to me.
Yeah. Just to remember the perspective of the seasons. I agree.
Yes.
Yeah, because when you are in the middle of it, it does feel unending. You know, in the middle of the
Yeah.
winter, it feels like it will never be warm again. And yeah, it is important for us to keep that perspective. It's good advice.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for taking the precious moments of everybody resting to let me interview you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like maybe we made it before Charlotte woke up.
Hey, yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah, I don't hear anything in the background.
All is well.
So, all right.
Nope.
Well, again, thank you very much, and you have a nice day.
Hey, thanks. You too. Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on the No Mom is an Island podcast. We hope it was an encouragement to you wherever you are in your mothering journey. If you would like to share your story or would like to see something added to our interviews, please contact us at nomomisanisland@gmail.com or send us a message on Facebook or Instagram. If you have enjoyed listening to the stories of other moms, please check out the episode description below for ways that you can help this podcast continue. Also listed in the episode description below are recommendations for some summer reading if you're looking for an idea. Thank you.